Welcome to Shatter.
Help me reach 5,000 subscribers. Support the video with a like and leave your thoughts in the comments. It happened on a Thursday night, under the cheap fluorescent lights of the firehouse kitchen. She laughed at something Ethan said, too long, too light, and when I walked in, her voice froze midair. Ethan looked at the floor, and just like that, I knew. He was my best friend, my brother on the line, the one I'd trusted to have my back when buildings burned. I'd pulled him out of a collapsing roof 2 years ago. Now he couldn't even look me in the eye. She turned to me and said something small, something that didn't fit the weight in the room. Don't make this a thing, Mark. Please. Her tone wasn't scared. It was tired. And that was worse. The next morning, I left before sunrise. The air smelled like rain and gasoline. I grabbed my usual black coffee from Dunkin', double espresso, no sugar. She was still asleep when I drove off. I watched the house shrink in the mirror, lights starting to fill the windows, and wondered when exactly she'd stopped waiting for me to come home. At the station, Ethan tried to act normal. He joked with the guys, poured himself another cup of burnt coffee, and pretended his hands didn't shake. I didn't say a word. When the alarm rang, I rode beside him in silence. Fire doesn't ask for explanations. It just takes what's flammable. That night, when I came back, her phone was face down on the counter, screen lighting up with messages I didn't need to read. She looked at me and whispered, "You're distant, Mark. You've been gone long before this." I wanted to argue, but she was right. I'd been gone, just not far enough. I didn't yell. I didn't throw anything. I just listened until the noise in her voice stopped sounding like language. She said, "Don't touch me right now." So I didn't. And that was the first moment something inside me shut down completely. I went out to the driveway and sat in my Toyota Tacoma for a long time. The rain hit the windshield in slow, heavy drops. I turned off my phone and just stared ahead. She warned me not to touch her. So I stopped reaching. For her, for us, for anything. A week passed before the silence became louder than any argument could have been. She moved through the house like a stranger, quiet, careful, wrapped in guilt she never named. I stopped asking where she went during the day. The answers didn't matter anymore. What mattered was what I felt leaving me, a piece at a time, the way smoke fades into air. At the firehouse, Ethan acted like everything was fine. He laughed too easily, talked too much. But every time the chief mentioned a new rotation or training schedule, I saw the flicker in his eyes, the same one I used to see right before he'd panic in a burning stairwell. I knew his patterns better than my own heartbeat. And now I was watching him crumble without laying a hand on him. I started spending my mornings at Dunkin' again, sitting in my truck with the coffee cooling beside me. No music, no phone, just the hum of the engine and the hollow quiet that followed me everywhere. Back home, she filled that quiet with sound. Old movies on Hulu playing long after midnight, laughter tracks covering what we both didn't want to hear. One night, I walked in and saw her on Facebook Marketplace, listing the same dining table we'd bought from Costco years ago. She said she wanted a fresh start, but it looked more like she was erasing the life we'd built, the one that had survived real fires, real storms. I stood behind her, said nothing, and she didn't even notice I was there. At work, I signed up for extra shifts, double coverage, high-risk zones, anything that kept me moving. The guys thought I was just restless. They didn't see that I was rebuilding something, a new rhythm, a new version of me. The kind that didn't wait for anyone's permission to change. One night after a late call, I drove past Ethan's place. His lights were off, but her car wasn't home either. I didn't need proof. I already had it, just not in pictures or words, but in the space between their voices when they lied. That was the night I decided. I wasn't going to explode. I wasn't going to confront. I was going to disappear in plain sight. The kind of silence that no one can come back from. It started with small things. I stopped texting back right away. I stopped checking her phone when she left it unlocked. Stopped waiting for her to notice me not waiting. At the station, I worked through breaks, volunteered for overnight calls, cleaned the engines long after everyone else had gone home. I didn't want rest. I wanted distance. Ethan avoided me now. He'd walk the long way around the lockers, talk to the rookies instead of me. I never confronted him, never said a word about what I knew. That was the difference between us. He needed to talk to ease his guilt. I could live with mine in silence. One night, during a routine inspection, I found something that changed everything. The city was reviewing transfer requests, and Ethan's name was next to hers as an emergency contact. Not mine. Hers. That wasn't an accident. It was a signal, quiet but exact. The kind that tells you a line has already been crossed. I went home late. She was grading papers at the kitchen table, a glass of wine beside her, the glow of Hulu playing in the background. She looked up, half-smiled, and said he'd called earlier about something work-related. Her voice trembled just enough to make the lie visible. I nodded, grabbed a drink from the fridge, and walked past her. She waited for me to ask something. Anything. I didn't. The silence between us had become its own language. Every unanswered word built a wall she could no longer climb. The next morning, I found my gear cleaned and folded on the counter. She'd washed it the way she used to. But it didn't feel like care. It felt like closure. I placed my station key beside it, right on the note where she'd written, "We need to talk." I didn't sign my name. That night, I drove to a Waffle House across town. Sat at the counter until the sky started to fade. The waitress asked if I wanted company. I told her I was fine. And for the first time in months, I almost believed it. That was the night I stopped belonging to her story. I started writing mine in silence. When I disappeared, I didn't announce it. I didn't pack dramatically or slam any doors. I just stopped showing up where I was expected. The house stayed clean, the bills were paid, and my uniform hung untouched in the closet. She came home to quiet rooms and folded laundry. Everything looked the same, except I wasn't there anymore. I transferred to another station 2 towns over, a smaller crew that didn't ask questions. They thought I was just chasing overtime. I let them think that. Every morning, I drove my truck past the old neighborhood, never turning down our street. The route became muscle memory, a map of what used to be my life. Ethan sent a few messages at first, the kind that sound casual but are really apologies in disguise. I didn't answer. Eventually, he stopped. People like him always do. They only chase the truth when they still think they can fix it. She reached out after 2 weeks. A short text. "Where are you?" I read it once, locked the screen, and didn't reply. That silence hit her harder than anything I could have said. She tried again later, through email this time, writing how she missed talking and didn't mean to hurt me. Words, always her weapon of choice. I used to love how she could find meaning in everything. Now it just sounded like smoke. At night, after long shifts, I'd end up at Waffle House again. The same booth, same black coffee. The waitress started recognizing me, stopped asking if I wanted a menu. She'd just pour the coffee and leave me alone. That silence was worth more than any conversation I'd had in months. She started calling the station. I knew because the chief pulled me aside one afternoon, said she sounded worried. I told him I was fine. He nodded but kept looking at me like he knew better. One night, I drove past our old house. Her car was in the driveway, lights on inside. Through the window, I saw her sitting alone, phone glowing in her hand. I waited for her to look out, to notice my truck parked across the street. She never did. That's when I knew I hadn't left her behind. I'd just outgrown the place where she could still reach me. Ethan's fall didn't come from me. It came from his own arrogance. That's the thing about guilt. It always leaks through the cracks. A few months after I transferred, a report surfaced about missing equipment at the old station. Small things at first, thermal cameras, radios. Then, fuel receipts that didn't add up. The chief asked questions, and suddenly Ethan wasn't so loud anymore. I didn't need to expose him. All I had to do was stay silent and let the truth catch up. I'd seen him cutting corners for years, bending rules to make himself look good. I used to cover for him. I don't do that anymore. One afternoon, I was sitting outside Dunkin', same corner table I'd claimed for weeks, when I got the text from one of the guys. "Your buddy's in trouble." Attached was a photo. Ethan sitting in the chief's office, head down, hands clasped. I stared at it for a long time, then locked my phone. I didn't feel joy or relief, just a strange kind of clarity. Some fires don't need water. They burn themselves out. That night, I drove past her college. She was walking out of the building alone, clutching her bag like it weighed more than books. The same woman who once lectured her students about honesty, empathy, human connection, now looked like someone who'd forgotten how to speak without lying. I didn't stop. I just watched her cross the parking lot and disappear behind the cars. Later, I went to Waffle House again. The waitress poured my coffee and said she hadn't seen me smile once since I started coming in. I told her maybe I was learning how. She nodded, said, "Some lessons take time." When I got home, I saw an email from my old station's HR. Ethan was suspended pending investigation. It wasn't my doing, but it was my silence that made space for it. I didn't reply. I didn't forward it to anyone. I just closed my laptop and stared at the reflection in the dark screen. I wasn't angry anymore. Just finished. He lost his position. She lost her story. And I, finally, lost the need to be understood. News travels fast in small towns, even faster in fire stations. Within days, everyone knew Ethan had been suspended. The same guys who used to laugh at his stories now looked away when his name came up. I didn't join the gossip. I didn't need to. Watching people realize what I'd known all along was its own quiet justice. I heard through one of the rookies that she'd shown up at the station asking for me. He said she looked shaken, like she hadn't slept in days. She asked if I was happy now, as if that was what this was about. But happiness wasn't the goal. Peace was. And peace comes after you stop fighting for people who enjoy watching you burn. She tried again a week later, calling the news station. The chief told her I wasn't taking personal calls. She left a message anyway, saying she just wanted to talk, that she finally understood. The words meant nothing now. You can't rebuild a bridge after you've set it on fire from both sides. I spent my nights differently. Less noise, fewer people. Sometimes I'd drive out past the edge of town, park by the old water tower, and watch the lights fade from the city. I wasn't running from anything anymore. I was learning what stillness felt like. At Waffle House, the waitress slid me a slice of pie I didn't order and said it was on the house. Maybe she thought I looked like I needed something sweet. I thanked her and left a tip twice the price. Kindness from strangers started to feel safer than love from the people who once swore they'd never hurt me. One night, I saw her again, at Costco of all places. She was alone, walking slowly through the aisles, pausing over things we used to buy together. Her hair was tied back, her face pale under the store lights. She noticed me before I could turn away. For a moment, neither of us moved. Then she nodded, like she finally accepted what silence really means. That was the first time I saw her without anger. Just distance. And somehow that was enough. After that day at Costco, she stopped trying to find me directly. Instead, she started leaving traces, posts online, little messages written for no one, but meant for me. Quotes about forgiveness, loss, healing. The kind of public pain that asks for witnesses. I didn't react. I'd spent years learning to run toward fire. Now, I was learning the discipline of standing still while something burned behind me. I heard Ethan left town. No goodbye, no explanation. The chief said he took a job out west, some volunteer unit desperate enough not to ask questions. Maybe he thought distance would erase his guilt. But guilt doesn't vanish. It follows you in the rearview mirror, quiet, patient. I should know. The guys at my new station started to notice the shift in me. I was different, colder, sharper. One of them said I looked like I slept with my eyes open. Maybe I did. Being alert had become my peace. The more detached I became, the more control I felt. For once, no one's emotions dictated mine. At home, I stripped the place bare. No pictures, no old letters, nothing left to interpret. Just clean walls and the hum of the refrigerator. Sometimes I'd watch the ceiling fan spin and think about how many times I tried to fix what didn't want saving. The weight that used to live in my chest started to dissolve, not into relief, but clarity. One night, I got home late from a double shift. The street was quiet, except for a car parked a few houses down. Hers. She didn't get out. Just sat there, headlights off, watching. I didn't move either. We stayed like that for almost 5 minutes. Two people who'd said everything there was to say without words. Then she drove off, slow, like she was leaving a crime scene. That night, I realized something. She hadn't just lost me. She'd lost the version of herself that existed because I believed in her. Without that mirror, she was alone with who she really was. And that was a fire no one could put out. A few weeks later, I got called to a fire near the edge of town. Old warehouse, half collapsed before we even got there. It wasn't serious, but it drew a crowd. People loved to watch destruction from a safe distance. As we packed up, I noticed a familiar face across the street, hers. Standing by her car, arms crossed, hair pulled back like she was trying to hold herself together. For a second, time folded in on itself. The woman who once waited for me to come home was now watching me from the outside, unsure if she even had the right. After the call, I walked past her without stopping. She called my name once, quiet but desperate. I didn't turn around. She waited a few seconds before whispering something that barely carried over the sirens. "You don't even look back anymore." She was right. I didn't. The habit of turning around had almost cost me my life once. I wasn't repeating that mistake. That night, she showed up at my door. I didn't invite her in. She said she just needed to explain. I told her there was nothing left to explain. Her eyes filled with all the words I used to chase, and I felt nothing. Not anger, not pity, just distance. She said, "I made a mistake." I told her mistakes end when they stop being repeated. Then I stepped back and closed the door. She stood there for a while. I watched her shadow through the blinds. Eventually, it faded from the porch light. I knew that moment would echo longer for her than any fight could have. Silence leaves marks no apology can erase. Later, I drove to Waffle House and sat at the counter again. The waitress poured me coffee without asking. A family laughed in the booth behind me, the kind of noise that used to irritate me but now sounded almost peaceful. I realized I wasn't running anymore. I was just living differently. That night was the first time I understood what freedom actually feels like. It doesn't roar, it whispers. And once you hear it, you can't go back to noise. After that night, she vanished for a while. No messages, no emails, no calls. The quiet was almost unsettling at first, like the air after a storm when everything still smells like smoke. I thought maybe she'd finally let it go. But then, one evening, I came home to a letter taped to my door. No envelope, just a folded page that had absorbed the damp of the night. Her handwriting, still neat, still careful. She wrote that she'd been going to therapy, that she finally understood what she'd broken. She said she didn't expect forgiveness, just wanted me to know she'd changed. I read it once, folded it back, and set it on the counter. Some things don't need to be answered to be finished. At work, I'd been offered a leadership role, a training instructor position. It meant longer hours, more responsibility, and a chance to teach rookies how to survive the same fires that nearly killed me. I said yes without hesitation. My life had found new gravity. It didn't revolve around her anymore. It revolved around purpose. A few days later, I saw her again. Not at a store or a fire scene, but at a community event for first responders. She stood alone near the back, wearing that same polite smile she used to wear when she was pretending everything was fine. People noticed her watching me. They whispered. She didn't flinch. When it was over, she approached, said she was proud of me, that I looked different, stronger. I thanked her, not as closure, but as acknowledgement. Like you'd thank someone who once taught you a painful but necessary lesson. She tried to hold my gaze, but couldn't. I could see it. The realization that whatever version of me she remembered was gone. That night, I drove home and stopped by Dunkin' for coffee. Same drink, same order, but it tasted new somehow. Like the past had finally lost its grip on it. I sat in my truck and let the steam fog the windshield. The life I'd built from silence was finally louder than the one I left behind. Somewhere in the distance, she was learning what it meant to lose someone who never raised his voice, only walked away. The last time I saw her was unplanned. Early morning, the kind of quiet hour when the streets still belong to the people who can't sleep. I stopped by Dunkin' after a night shift, coffee in hand, still in uniform. She was there, sitting alone by the window. No makeup, no performance. Just real. For a moment, I almost didn't recognize her. Life had stripped away the layers, the confidence, the constant need to be heard. What was left was something honest, maybe even fragile. She looked up and smiled, small and uncertain. I nodded, out of habit more than warmth. She said she'd heard about my promotion, that she was glad things were working out for me. Her voice shook, but there was no manipulation in it this time. Just truth. I told her I hoped she'd found what she was looking for. She said quietly, "I was looking for you." I didn't respond. Some sentences aren't meant to be met halfway. We sat there for a minute, separated by more than the table between us. When I stood to leave, she didn't stop me, just whispered something I barely caught. Something about how she finally understood that silence can be louder than love. I walked out, the bell above the door ringing once, sharp and final. Outside, the morning was cold but clear. I stood by my truck for a while, watching the sky turn from gray to pale gold. The city was waking up, the world moving on, and for the first time, I felt fully part of it again. Not trapped in memory, not defined by loss. Just present. Driving home, I passed the old firehouse. The place looked smaller now, like it belonged to a different life. Maybe it did. I'd learned something through all of it, that walking away isn't weakness when you do it with clarity. It's control. When people ask why I left, I tell them I didn't disappear. I just stopped showing up where I wasn't respected. And sometimes, that's the loudest kind of goodbye there is. Drop it in the comments. Hit subscribe. This is where we talk about what doesn't get forgiven.